Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I'll be reviewing and paging through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Death on the Reik from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. This is Volume 2 of the Enemy Within Director's Cut. And is this possibly the best chapter in what's considered to be one of the greatest fantasy role-playing games ever created? Or is this simply a bit of chrome thrown on a dusted-off moldy oldie? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I am going to be reviewing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Death on the Reik. This is Volume 2 of the Enemy Within campaign Director's Cut. It is written by Jim Bombra, Graham Davis, and Phil Gallagher, with artwork provided by Clara Marie Morin, Daniel Earls, Aaron Ray, Giacomo Tappanier, J.G. O'Donoghue, Joseph Kuchera, Matteo Spirito, Pasi Uhola, Raquel Mackin, Ruxandra Andrea, Ruslan Skifinich, Sam Manley, Scott Purdy, Tom Ventre, Victor Leza, Ralph Horsley, Andy Law, and Daniel K. Hopefully I did not butcher too many of those names. This 160-page hardcover is available from Cubicle 7 Entertainment, including the PDF, for $39.99. If you just want to pick up the PDF alone, you can grab that over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. Do want to mention the Gaming Gang is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit DriveThruRPG, please stop by thegaminggang.com first, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, we get a little portion of that sale. And every nickel, dime, and quarter really does add up and helps keep thegaminggang.com around. All right, let's move on over to the other camera. So there are a couple of things I'm going to point out before I jump in. Do also want to mention I'm going to stay picture-in-picture up here. So I will actually be cutting off a little bit of the book. I know pirates hate that, but got to do it, although this has been out for quite some time in PDF already. Anyway, first off, the fine folks over at Cubicle 7 Entertainment were kind enough to send me this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this book with you. These days, it's very important that you know that. Secondly, I am going to give away 2 copies of Death on the Reik in PDF to a couple of lucky viewers. I'm going to mention how you'll be able to get into the running a little later on in this video. I am not going to put a timestamp for it. So if you want to find out how you can win one of 2 copies of Death on the Reik in PDF, stay tuned. Let's flip on over to the back. And at the appointed time we shall pour forth from the forest to slay and burn. Our brethren shall rise from their secret places and throw down the towns and cities of the empire. Chaos will cover the land, and we, the chosen servants, shall be exalted in his eyes. Hail to Zinich, changer the ways. Or whatever it says. Death on the Reik is the second volume of the revised and updated director's cut of The Enemy Within, one of the most highly regarded role-playing campaigns ever written. Death on the Reik carries on from where Enemy in Shadows left off, taking your unlikely heroes on a grand adventure up and down the remarkable Reik, the largest river in the old world and trade route to the heart of the Empire. Death on the Reik is part 2 of the 5-part series of grim and perilous Warhammer fantasy roleplay adventures that inspired a generation of gamers. The director's cut includes insightful commentary with a smattering of dark humor, clever suggestions on new ways to play through the campaign, and a selection of mentors to prepare your characters for the perils to come. All right, we are going to dive on in. I am going to do my best to keep this as spoiler-free as I possibly can. It's going to be impossible for me to keep this absolutely spoiler-free because I have to talk about the adventure and some of the things I think are very cool about it, and other aspects of this book. So do want to mention, if you are a player and you're hoping that your game master is going to run the enemy within campaign, of course, with Death on the Reik, I would recommend tuning out now. Tell your game master to check out this video. But if you're a player, you're going to have some things spoiled by sitting through this video. All right, so we get a bit of history. I should point out, I'm not going to page through every single page. I'll probably skip a page here and there. So we get picking up from where Enemy and Shadows left off. And depending on how you concluded that adventure is how this will kick off. Once again, I don't want to spoil any things, but things could have gone very poorly in Bogenhof for the player characters, or things could have gone very well. So essentially, the player characters are subjects of some mistaken identity. And these chaos cultists think one of the characters, unless that character has moved on to the great beyond, is actually like one of the leaders of the cult who had inherited a bunch of money. And of course, the cult expects to get that money. So, but that's not the case. So one character is the spitting image of this cultist who is who was killed in an accident. So it's kind of interesting. So the players are going to have the cult of the purple hand on their tails, but there's also another chaos cult that is going to get involved as well. So at one point, the player characters will have experienced some river travel in Enemy and Shadows. This is going to contain a lot of river travel because the players end up with their own boat. So the rules for traveling the rivers of the old world, as well as trading and commerce, are all contained in the Death on the Reik companion, which I am going to review. That review will be out in just a few days. We'll point out, as of me filming this book is not in stores yet. It is coming in just about 2 weeks. It'll be in stores. Right, so we're going to start off. We've got a few small adventures to kind of get things moving along, and the player characters have these various different leads and rumors that they're following up on. There were quite a few things that were going on in Bogenhofen, which is the prior volume in this campaign, that they're going to be following up on, and the players are going to be traveling along the river, along the Reik. And of course, there's other things built into this as well. So we've got some river encounters. There are quite a few more river encounters included in the companion as well. So it's just, these chapters are kind of breaking down what happens from this point to this point, this point to this point, this point to that point, as the player characters are traveling along the Reik. This is a rather linear campaign. It is not a complete railroad. There is enough player agency that they can kind of go off on their own and explore different areas. It's not going to be just A to B, B to C, C to D. But there is some linear aspects to the adventure as well. Now, there's a castle that the player characters are going to pass. Ta-da! And early in this adventure, it's not recommended that the characters check it out yet. That try to find a way for them not to go to this castle, because there's other NPCs that need to be introduced for the player characters to get the most out of this adventure as well. So one of the aspects of Enemy in Shadows that I know some people have brought up is the fact that not a ton of monsters. Yeah, you had some beastmen, you had some forces of chaos at the end, especially if you did not prevent something from taking place. If you did, then probably not so much. Well, about the first, I'd say about the first half of Death on the Reik is pretty creature free, outside of a mutant or beast man or goblins. But once you reach the castle, what I personally feel is the main act of this adventure, and those who have played through Death on the Reik in the past no doubt feel is the absolute standout of the adventure. Things are going to change. That is for sure. They are going to get a lot of weirdness and chaos warped creatures. So pretty cool stuff. Just kind of zipping through here a bit. Now there is one main NPC who's kind of behind a lot of what's going on throughout this adventure. And essentially what's taking place, once again, I'm going to try to stay pretty spoiler free, but the player characters learn about this meteorite that fell to Earth that seems like everybody wants to get their hands on. And the players follow a procession of different leads and rumors, and they're kind of traipsing all over the place and kind of backtracking a little bit as well when they get to the place that the meteor fell, and it's warp stone. So, of course, it's chaos energy. They don't necessarily know that. But they'll end up going to the location where it was found. Of course, it's no longer there. It's actually been taken somewhere else, which the player characters had passed through previously. And one of the NPCs is a noble woman who is, you can make her really creepy. She's, of course, being warped by chaos. And even though she's still a relatively beautiful woman and looks normal, just the festering chaos within her has created this putrid stench she gives off. So she has to mask that with heavy perfumes. And one of the interesting aspects of the NPC that game masters can utilize is that whenever she's been somewhere, that perfume will linger in the air for some time. So you can drop the scent of the perfume in various places that the player characters arrive, and they know that this NPC has been there just ahead of them. They just missed her. All right. So anyway, so we get to the castle, and Castle Wingrenstein. I don't know. Trying to pronounce that. And this is where things are going to be really, really wacky. There are different monsters. There's undead. There's chaos corrupted creatures and people. And really, very, very cool. I will mention that for the player characters to get the most out of this, the game master has to try to do their best to not make everything just boil down into combat. And I know sometimes that can be a bit tricky. And I'm not saying don't have combat, because it's one of the fun things about Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is the combat and the lethality of it with the critical hits and everything. So you don't want to take that away, but this castle could just turn into one big running battle, which I got to be honest, your player characters are not going to be able to survive. So there is another NPC, a rather famous NPC that will be found in the castle as well. And I am not going to ruin it for anybody, but they are probably one of the coolest NPCs and most bizarre NPCs you will encounter in any Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game adventure. I wish this book went into a little more detail about Ludwig, who the characters will encounter. One of the aspects of this adventure I find pretty interesting is, and this is sort of a theme that runs through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in other adventures as well, is things are never as they seem. And that's both good and bad. So that's one of the aspects I think is very, very cool. One thing I have to point out that, at least in my opinion, I think this adventure originally took a lot of inspiration from The Fall of the House of Usher, as well as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So there is a very serious Poe vibe that runs through this castle aspect. And you can really, really build on the creepiness, just the sense of things not being right. Things have been corrupted. Really, really dig this. And we're going to just kind of, we're just zipping through it so that that I don't give too much away. So once the castle has been dealt with, the players will find themselves embarked on some, I guess we'll say, a little more mundane adventuring that is going to put them on the path to the third volume in the Enemy Within campaign, and that is Power Behind the Throne. And they'll have some urban adventuring in here as well. Just kind of popping on through here. The artwork throughout the book is very, very nice. Always like the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay artwork. Although I've pointed out time and time again, I am not super keen. And I got to be honest, I'm not sure which artist this is. But I have seen their art in Call of Cthulhu as well as throughout Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I mean, it's not bad. In fact, it's very detailed. I like it. It's just the faces always look off. They always look kind of weird to me. But as you heard, there are a lot of different artists in this book. So one of the cool aspects, too, is at the end here, I'll back up, we have training and mentors. So if you're not overly familiar with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the player characters have occupations. They have careers. And they can change those careers from time to time. And this points out various different NPCs in the game that the player characters could utilize to join a new profession, to have a new career, because that is something that will happen throughout the lifespan of a player character, is they will change careers and, of course, pick up new skills and possibly even ranks in status as far as culture goes. So I thought that was kind of cool. Then we've got an index. We've got some handouts as well. Got an adventure timetable. There's a lot going on in this adventure. So it's important that you pay attention to the timetable, because at one point it could turn into a race between the player characters and one of the groups of cultists to acquire a certain item. But you'll also notice that some of these handouts are just to give the players a feel for what something looks like. So like Wujendorf, the Temple of Sigmar, Itelka's Tower. So once again, very nicely done. Very cool. And then, of course, we get Power Behind the Throne, which is chapter 3 of the Enemy Within Director's Cut. This is out in PDF. So Power Behind the Throne is out in PDF. Speaking of PDFs, if you would like to win one of 2 copies of Death on the Reik from Cubicle 7 Entertainment, it's very easy to get into the running. I always make my contests really easy. There's 3 steps. 1, be a subscriber to the Gaming Gang channel. Easy enough. 2, like this video. And 3, comment on this video. And please, make it a nice comment. I don't give things away to people who are nasty. And I will reveal the 2 winners on the May 24th edition of my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch. And all I'll simply need is email addresses so I can make sure that those 2 winners will receive Death on the Reik. All right, let's swing on over to the other camera. I will provide some thoughts about this adventure as well as my final review score. So I had always heard a lot of really good things about the Enemy Within, and Enemy in Shadow was very cool. I really did like it. I thought that was a great starting off point. I love the fact that Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay has some kind of dark humor to it. That also is included in Death on the Reik. Not as much, though, especially once you get to the castle. There could be some bizarre happenings, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's dark humor. I think Death on the Reik is excellent, but there are a few things that I do want to mention. There are some aspects of the original release that have been separated out and put into the companion book, which some people might be a little ticked off about or might kind of take away from their desire to pick up Death on the Reik. Give you one example is there is a rather famous encounter from the original edition that takes place on the river. And once again, no spoilers, but it would be a character that I would think Christopher Lee would have been very comfortable playing. That's not in here. It is not in here. There are a few deleted scenes, is what they're being called, that are included in the companion. Also, the rules for river travel and commerce and trading is all in the companion. It used to be part of the original release. So some people might be, taken aback by that. I got to be honest, though, there's nothing going on with Death on the Reik that you honestly need the companion to be able to run. Good game master, they're just going to, come on, hand wave it, right? Do you really need all those detailed commerce rules? Maybe you want them, but that doesn't mean you need them. So also just wanted to point that out where there are some things that have been part of Death on the Reik in previous editions that are no longer in this book that is all over in the companion. That said, I think this adventure is great. You don't even have to be wanting to run Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay to be able to utilize this book. There are a lot of really great beats and adventures in here that you could easily port over to any other fantasy role-playing game. The castle location and the surrounding village are a prime example that you could easily pull that if you wanted to run it for Pathfinder or 5e or an OSR game, by all means. Only problem is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay tends to be a little trickier to convert over to a D20 system than it is for, obviously enough, it's a D100 system for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. But there are loads and loads of great ideas that you could steal from this book, even if you have no interest in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay or The Enemy Within. That said, I think this is an excellent campaign. I am really enjoying reading through The Enemy Within. I am very, very curious to know what they are going to do, Cubicle 7, of course, and the authors are going to do when they get to that, like the 4th and 5th chapters, because that's where I have always heard that the campaign kind of loses its luster, especially the conclusion. I've always heard from people that most people feel that the conclusion is a bit anticlimactic. Then again, my understanding is I think Graham Davis is rewriting a lot of that, a lot of the 4th and especially 5th chapters. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Death on the Reik a 9.5. I think it is that good. I think that there is tons of inspiration in here. Yes, some of the stuff has been sliced out and put into the companion, but it's not critical. It's not crucial adventuring material. So definitely see where people have said that this is pretty much the ultimate chapter of the Enemy Within campaign. Really good stuff. Highly recommended. All right. That is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do, ding that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as this and my upcoming review of the, you guessed it, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Death on the Reik Companion. It'll also let you know when I upload other videos and when my stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs live right here on YouTube, Monday through Thursday nights, as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news, as well as first looks at board games, role-playing games, miniature rules, and more. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you once again for watching. And as I wrap up all my videos during this never-ending pandemic, I certainly hope each and every one of you out there is being smart and staying safe. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, if you haven't subscribed to the Gaming Gang channel yet, click right here. If you'd like to see the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, click right up there. And if you want to trust YouTube's algorithm to give you something to watch, click right there. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and everybody please wear a mask.